Seeds of Hope. A deadly journey for the seeds of life, a friendship tested by the storms of a broken Earth. By 2095, Earth had become unrecognizable. The world was no longer the fertile, life-sustaining planet it once was. Storms ravaged the surface, and the once thriving cities were now ruins, buried under the weight of nature's fury. The air was thick with pollution, and the skies were often hidden by layers of dust and smoke. Humanity had retreated into protective domes, struggling to survive in a world that no longer welcomed them. Inside Dome 17, Valeria worked in a greenhouse. The greenhouse had once been her sanctuary, full of vibrant plants and fresh food, but now it felt more like a tomb. The crops were dying, the soil had lost its richness, and the air was too dry to support the plants. Each day, Valeria watched the once healthy plants wither, their leaves turning yellow and brittle. The city's food supply was dwindling, and there was only enough to last a few more weeks. Valeria had always dreamed of restoring life to the earth. She wanted to see green fields and healthy crops again, to bring back the beauty that had once flourished. But with every passing day, that dream seemed more impossible. She spent long hours in the greenhouse, trying everything she could to revive the plants, but it felt like a losing battle. One day, as she sorted through old records in the back of the greenhouse, she stumbled upon something that made her heart race: a map to an ancient seed bank. It was said to hold seeds that could survive even in the harshest conditions. These seeds, if found, could save her people and bring life back to the dying world. Valeria's pulse quickened. She had to find this seed bank. It was the only hope for her city. But to reach it, she would have to leave the safety of the dome and venture into the dangerous world outside. Her only companion in this mission was Tara, a robot that had been by her side for years. Tara was more than just a helper. It was a friend, a constant presence in her life. Together, they had worked to keep the greenhouse alive, and now they would have to face the unknown together. With a heavy heart but a determined spirit, Valeria packed her supplies and prepared to leave Dome 17. She didn't know if she would ever return, but she couldn't stay. Her people needed her. As Valeria and Tara stepped outside the dome, the full weight of the world hit her. The sky was overcast, the air thick with dust and the scent of decay. The land was barren, cracked and dry from years of storms. The buildings, once proud symbols of human achievement, were now abandoned skeletons, crumbling under the forces of nature. Tara's sensors beeped quietly, scanning the surroundings. The environment is extremely hostile, and Incent said, its voice calm despite the danger. Valeria nodded, feeling the unease settle in her chest. I know, but we have no choice. We have to find the seed bank. They traveled for days, walking through the wasteland. The roads were long and empty, and there were no signs of life. Only the occasional broken-down vehicle or a rusted structure remained to remind them of the world that once was. The land seemed endless, stretching on in every direction, barren and lifeless. At night, they camped under the dim light of the stars, the silence of the world pressing in around them. Valeria couldn't help but think of the people back in Dome 17, waiting for her to return. What if she didn't make it back? What if the journey was too much? But she couldn't afford to dwell on those thoughts. The fate of her city depended on her, and she couldn't fail them. On the third day of their journey, a fierce windstorm hit without warning. The sky darkened, and the winds howled, throwing sand and dust into the air. Tara urged Valeria to seek shelter, and they managed to find a ruined building to hide in. The storm raged for hours, the wind battering the walls of their shelter. Valeria sat with her arms wrapped around her knees, staring out at the storm, her thoughts spinning. I've never seen a storm like this, she whispered to Tara. How long do you think it will last? Tara analyzed the storm. The weather patterns are unpredictable. We must wait it out. As the storm howled outside, Valeria tried to rest, but her mind was racing. Would they make it? Could they find the seed bank before the food ran out in Dome 17? The days felt like weeks, but eventually the storm began to calm, and they set out again, determined to keep going. After a few days of quiet travel, a new storm began to form in the sky. This one was different, a lightning storm. The air felt heavy with electricity, and Tara's sensors began to beep nervously. "We should find shelter," Tara warned. "This storm is dangerous." Valeria looked around. There was no shelter in sight. She and Tara were in the open, miles away from any form of cover. The storm approached quickly, and before they could find safety, the first bolt of lightning struck. It lit up the sky like a flare, and the ground trembled under the power of the strike. Valeria grabbed Tara's arm, pulling it closer as the storm intensified. The next flash of lightning hit the ground right beside them. It was too close. A blast of electricity surged through the air, striking Tara directly. Tara's body jolted violently, sparks flying from its circuits. Valeria screamed in panic as the robot fell to the ground, lifeless. "No, Tara," she cried, rushing to the robot's side. "Tara, please," she whispered, kneeling beside the robot. For a moment she thought she had lost her only friend, but then weakly Tara's voice returned. "Valeria, the seed bank, you must find it." Valeria's heart ached as she looked at the damaged robot. But she knew what she had to do. She couldn't let everything be in vain. She had to finish the journey for Dome 17, for Tara, and for all of humanity. With great care, she picked up the damaged robot and continued on, determined to finish what they had started. The wind howled as Valeria and Tara made their way toward the mountains. They had reached the region where the seed bank was rumored to be located, but the terrain had grown rough and jagged. The sky had darkened further, clouds swirling ominously overhead. Each step felt heavier, as though the very earth was trying to hold them back. Tara's sensors beeped urgently, scanning for signs of danger. "Valeria, I detect an increase in atmospheric instability. A storm is approaching rapidly." "I know," Valeria said, her voice strained. She was exhausted and her limbs ached with every step, but she couldn't stop now. The seed bank was close. As they crested a rocky hill, a sudden break in the clouds revealed the entrance to the vault. The building was old, its stone exterior covered in thick vines and moss. Time had not been kind to it, but it still stood strong, a testament to the wisdom of the past. Valeria's heart leaped at the sight. This was it, the key to saving her people. She moved forward, Tara following closely behind, its servos humming quietly. The vault's entrance was guarded by a heavy metal door, rusted with age but still intact. Valeria reached out, her hand trembling slightly as she brushed the vines away. There, embedded in the door, was a keypad, its numbers faded and worn. Tara's systems buzzed as it scanned the door. "Access code required," Tara said, its voice soft but firm. Valeria's mind raced. She had memorized the code from the old records back in Dome 17. Her fingers moved quickly over the keypad, punching in the sequence. A click echoed through the air, and the heavy door groaned open. Inside, the vault was cool and dimly lit. Shelves upon shelves lined the walls, each filled with small containers and packages of seeds. The seeds were ancient. Some of them had been preserved for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. They had been carefully stored to endure the ravages of time. Valeria stepped forward, awe and hope blooming in her chest. She began to gather the seeds, carefully placing them into her pack. Each one could be a lifeline for her people, a chance to restore life to their dying world. Her hands shook with the weight of the responsibility she carried, but as she worked, a distant rumble echoed in the air. The storm was no longer a threat. It had arrived. "Valeria, the storm is growing stronger," Tara said, its voice tinged with concern. "We must leave now." Valeria hesitated for a moment, her gaze lingering on the shelves of seeds. They were her last hope, the last hope for the people of Dome 17. But she knew they couldn't stay. With a heavy heart, she packed the seeds into her bag and turned toward the door. Just as they stepped outside, the first bolt of lightning struck nearby, splitting the sky with a flash so bright it almost blinded her. The wind howled louder, and the earth seemed to tremble beneath her feet. She grabbed Tara's arm, pulling the robot close as the storm grew fiercer. "Hold on," Valeria said, her voice barely audible over the roar of the wind. The seed bank was behind them now, but the storm was upon them. The journey back was even harder than the one out. The storm seemed to follow them, relentless and unforgiving. Valeria fought against the wind, her legs heavy with exhaustion. Tara, though battered from the lightning strike, pressed on beside her. The robot's systems were damaged, and its movements had slowed, but its determination was unwavering. "Valeria, I am still functional," Tara said, its voice crackling slightly. "We must reach the dome." Valeria didn't have the strength to respond, but she nodded, grateful for Tara's presence. Without the robot, she would have been lost long ago. They had already been through so much together, and she knew that they had to make it back. The future of Dome 17 depended on it. The storm raged on, forcing them to take cover whenever the lightning struck too close. Hours stretched into days as they trudged through the unforgiving landscape. At one point, the rain became so heavy that Valeria's clothes were soaked through, her skin chilled to the bone. Tara's joints began to seize, and its movements became slower and more mechanical. Valeria had to support the robot, pulling it along when it faltered. At night, they sought shelter in any ruined building they could find. There, Valeria would rest for a few hours, keeping her eyes on the distant horizon. But sleep never came easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she thought about the city she was fighting to save, the people who were depending on her. What if she didn't make it back? What if the crops died before she could even plant the seeds? But every time doubt crept in, she would hear Tara's voice, steady and calm, urging her forward, and she would remember why she couldn't stop. Not yet, not until the seeds were planted and her people were safe. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Valeria and Tara reached Dome 17. The sight of the dome's protective walls brought a rush of relief and exhaustion. Valeria stumbled forward, Tara beside her, its movements slow and jerky. The city's gates opened to welcome them, and the people of Dome 17 rushed to meet her. Their faces were drawn, their eyes filled with worry. Valeria didn't waste a moment. She made her way straight to the greenhouse, her heart pounding with both excitement and fear. The people followed her, watching with bated breath as she carefully opened the bag containing the precious seeds. She moved quickly, planting the seeds into the soil, her hands trembling with the weight of the task. Every seed she planted felt like a prayer, a hope for the future. Tara stood nearby, watching with its ever-vigilant sensors scanning the area, ensuring that no harm would come to Valeria or the crops. It had been through so much, and now it was here to witness the start of something new. As the days passed, the seeds began to grow. The once barren soil began to stir with life. Green sprouts broke through the ground, and soon the greenhouse was filled with the scent of fresh plants and new growth. The people of Dome 17 celebrated. Their survival was assured. But Valeria could not shake the feeling that something was missing. Despite the joy around her, she couldn't forget about Tara. The robot had been her constant companion, and now it was damaged beyond repair. Valeria spent the next few weeks working tirelessly to repair Tara. She scoured the dome, finding every part she could use to fix the robot. There were old machines that had been abandoned long ago, and Valeria tore them apart, repurposing their parts to rebuild her friend. It was difficult work, and she was exhausted, but she refused to give up. She couldn't bear the thought of losing Tara. The robot had been her lifeline, her protector, and her friend. It had saved her when she had been at her lowest, and now it was her turn to return the favor. After long days and sleepless nights, Valeria finally placed the last circuit into place. She held her breath as she powered up the robot. For a long moment, nothing happened. Her heart sank. Then, with a soft whir, Tara's eyes flickered on. "Valeria, how can I help?" it asked, its voice gentle but steady. Tears filled Valeria's eyes as she smiled, relief flooding her body. "You've already helped more than you'll ever know." Together they stood in the greenhouse, watching the crops thrive and grow. The future was uncertain, but Valeria knew that with Tara by her side, they could rebuild the world. The seeds had been planted. Now they would watch as the earth healed, one small step at a time, and it would bloom.